How we doing, everybody, and happy Friday. Welcome to Wisconsin Sports. Time to go with Trade. I'm your host, Trade, today, joined by Austin. Austin, how are we doing on this fantastic Friday in the state of Wisconsin?
TGIF. That's all I gotta say. Thank God it's Friday.
Thank God it's Friday for sure. We have a lot of previews to talk about for the weekend coming up here. We have the Bucks coming up tonight. We're going to kind of preview that game there. Also talking about the Brewers a little bit. And like I said, getting into the Badgers, the Packers, the college football weekend, and also talking the NFL slate. So right away, we're going to jump into the Bucks. The Bucks play tonight, 6:30 p.m. Austin tells me that this is the start of the in-season tournament that the NBA has now implemented into the year. The Bucks, Knicks, this is going to be, I think it's going to be a better game than what ESPN predicts. Right now, ESPN has this as a 70% chance the Bucks win this game. That seems like a pretty high margin. I don't think the Knicks are that bad that the Bucks are favored so heavily in this one. I think it's going to be a closer game than what they're predicting. Right now, RJ Barrett's leading it for the Knicks, 21 points a game at the moment. Robinson's averaging about 11 rebounds per game right now, and Julius Randle is averaging about 5 assists per game. Giannis leads the Bucks in rebounds and points, 24 points a game and 8.5 rebounds per game. Damian Lillard leads the team in assists. So, Austin, what are you looking at in this game against the Knicks? What will be key for the Bucks going into this one? I think it's going to rely heavily on can Damian Lillard and Giannis get going in this ball game. We haven't seen them both really get going at the same time, along with Middleton. They did say they expect Middleton to get his full minutes at that 7-8 game mark into the season here. So I don't expect him to be playing a lot of minutes yet. But with these other cast of characters, what are you looking at in this one?
Yeah, I was gonna say it'll be interesting to see how Damian does. See if he can respond back from a down game from last week or from last game, and then see how Giannis does. Just overall, see how the team does from kind of playing poorly against who they played last week. To see how they play against they lost to the Raptors pretty bad, so it would be interesting to see how they respond to that, and especially with their bench players, to see how they can come off the bench and just. I want to see a little bit of improvement from last game. I think that's the main part. Just show a little bit more collaboration throughout the whole team, and maybe hopefully we don't have to rely. Hopefully we don't have to rely on Giannis and Damian Lillard as much. Hopefully Middleton will be able to get some points in there since he is playing a full game too.
The big thing's going to be perimeter shooting. We saw it against the Raptors there. They kind of locked down the paint, and that stopped Giannis's game. So against the Knicks, I expect if teams watch that one, they're going to try the same thing. They know how to stop or slow down the Bucks now, so they're going to try to utilize it for themselves going into this one. That's where the Bucks really need to emphasize we need to hit our outside shots. And if we can't hit the outside shots, the guards have to at least be able to get into the paint and drive, get those defenders to respect them out there on the perimeter, and that's good. I think that'll lead to a lot more success for the Bucks because that gets your all-star player going in Giannis right there. But like I said, Bucks 6:30 start tonight against the Knicks from the Pfizer. They're gonna have you said it was the in-season tournament
NBA
start.
Yep, NBA in-season tournament. So something new.
So the group
It'll be
play
interesting to see
tonight.
how that goes.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity for players and teams in season here to earn a little bit of something for themselves while also improving along the stretch there, getting kind of a playoff atmosphere in season. I think that's going to be a big thing for some of these teams to see when the pressure's on, what some of these teams can do.
Yeah, these games still count towards regular season too, so they're just as important for the in-season as the regular season, trying to fight for that normal NBA playoff.
100%. And to see some of these other teams that you would normally not face in such a high leverage situation too. You know, if you get to that semifinal, that championship game in there, it becomes a different kind of atmosphere inside of the regular season. Kind of put your team to the test there against. I don't know who you're going to face in that championship. I couldn't even gauge it yet because the NBA is still wide open. But you're going to face some high caliber teams getting into this tournament. So that is, I think, it's huge for the game of the NBA too, and it brings a little bit of excitement too to the regular season. It doesn't drag as much as what we normally would see out of an NBA season. But with that, just a quick with the Brewers, they did sign Colin Ray back today to the club. Justin Wilson and Andrew Chafin they didn't pick up their options, so they're gonzo right now. And Craig Counsell met with the Guardians, supposed to meet with the Mets on Monday, and now the Astros are interested in Craig Counsell. I got a feeling Craig Counsell will be leaving Milwaukee. And to me, I talked about it a little bit. I didn't get into it much. It's kind of a sad thing for me because Craig Counsell is a Milwaukee. He hasn't been in Milwaukee his entire life, but he's invested a lot into the city of Milwaukee, into Wisconsin sport, into the Brewers, everything like that. And, you know, all he wanted to do was win a championship. And he came close, couldn't get over the hump. A lot of people like to blame him. But at the same time, David Stearns walked away from the Brewers. And I talked about it a little bit. What was the reasoning behind David Stearns leaving Milwaukee? He built the team pretty well. Got Yelich, got Lorenzo Cain, brought in Moustakas, built an NLCS team, a team that could have went to the World Series. Then all of a sudden, mid-season, he decides, I'm going to trade Josh Hader. Well, we're in the pennant race right now. Sends him away. And then they ask Mark Ananasio, the owner of the Brewers, they say, hey, whose decision was this? And Mark says, oh, well, that was David's. David made that decision all by himself. Oh. So my theory, Mark Ananasio threw David Stearns on his bus. Mark Ananasio didn't want to pay Josh Hader. So he said, David, you find us the best move we can make for Josh Hader right now. I think Craig Counsell's seeing this stuff go down. And Craig Counsell said, as much as I want to stay in Milwaukee, unless if you're going to give me $5-6 million, because that's what he wants. And, you know, they say managers don't deserve as much as what players make, but at the same time, these managers are managing all 162 games. They're in every single spring training. They're there. They're scouting. They're doing everything in between. They don't really have an off season. They're constantly getting phone calls. They're working late nights. They have just as rough a job as these major league players do. So $5-6 million, I don't think that's too bad to ask. That's where I'm at with the Craig Counsell situation. I think he sees what the Brewers are leading towards right now because something stuck out when Matt Arnold talked about Craig Counsell. He said that him and Craig Counsell talked a lot, but they had different views. And it was interesting when he thought about it. Different views. What's the view of Matt Arnold? What's the view of Craig Counsell? I think Craig Counsell saw opportunity to go get guys, to make moves, everything in between. And Matt Arnold looked at it from the opposite spectrum where he's like, I got to please my boss here, Mark Ananasio. Don't spend too much money. Just get guys that are going to keep us underneath the salary. Cheap guys who are low, they're high risk, low reward. And we're not really getting anything out of them. And that's where I think Craig Counsell's like, there's the door. I know Steve Cohen and David Stearns out there at the Mets. Steve Cohen's got an open checkbook, and David Stearns knows how to make moves. The Mets is a cushion job for him. The Astros, always right there. Guardians, you're going to have to rebuild. But Cleveland, not too far away from getting back home to Milwaukee, up by Whitefish Bay, where he's from. And then also, his son is going to college in Minnesota, being able to go over to Minnesota there. So, you know, people said he wouldn't move because of family. I really don't think that's the case. I think Craig Counsell he wouldn't be, these aren't interviews. You know, they said that he's interviewing for these jobs. It's Craig Counsell. They know who Craig Counsell is. The Guardians have played Craig Counsell in the Brewers. David Stearns was the GM for the Brewers while Craig Counsell was managing. He's walking into these buildings and they're saying, Craig, what's it going to take to get you here? Put a dollar amount down. We'll try to get your dollar amount for you. That is what is going on in every single one of these meetings that he's having. What's your outlook on it, your perspective on the whole situation?
Yeah, I haven't watched the Brewers. I'm not as much into the Brewers as you are, but all I know is not David Stearns, but Craig Counsell's done wonders for the Brewers. I'd say for the past how many years that he's been a manager, even though he hasn't won that World Series exactly, he's taken us pretty far in the playoffs and gotten us in the wild cards. And it is tough for him because we have lost to the um the team that's went to the World Series in the NL for how many years in a row now. It is tough for him. But like you said, I mean, if there is that underlying thing that he's seen that we might not be seeing, and he's trying to get out of there, I mean, I can see that. I mean, it is tough to see him go because he is a Wisconsin man. But I mean, if you look at the Brewers, we just don't have the money to be like, and that could be from the owner not wanting to spend that money, or that could be like just as um, an actual organization. We just don't have the money to be spending on being able to get those big market guys. I mean, we got Christian Yelich, that was huge. Lorenzo Cain, that was huge. But when it comes to having to re-sign guys, it seems like we don't have the money to be paying those guys. And then you kind of just rely on Craig Counsell to throw something together, and then we expect every single year for us to get to the playoffs. And it's hard on him, I feel like. So, I mean, if you're looking at it from Craig Counsell's view, it's like, I've been here for how many years trying to get to the World Series. Nothing's working. I can interview with the Mets, who, like you said David Stearns works there now, right?
Yep.
So David Stearns works there. And I feel like when David Stearns was working for the Brewers, he was a pretty darn good manager. I mean, you look at some of the things he's done for the Brewers, some of the trades, it's kind of ridiculous. So he knows how David Stern operates. They got a lot more money than the Brewers will ever give out. And then you also look at Houston. I mean, Houston's already just been a powerhouse for a while now. So he could probably just go in there and just start winning games right away. So, I mean, it is tough to see, but I mean, if you look at Craig Counsell's perspective, I can see how he might want to just leave and try and chase that World Series for himself.
Yeah, I wouldn't even hate him. You know, if he came back to Milwaukee, couldn't even hate on him. I would pray nothing for the best and hope that he could get that World Series as a manager because, I mean, he's a laid back guy. And, you know, you look at it from the perspective of people say, well, why doesn't Craig go out there and argue more often? Why doesn't he go out there and argue? You look at managers who go out there. He tried to set a tone in the dugout to the sense of, you looked at what Victor Caratini had to say about him, Mark Canha. He's a laid back guy. He tried to set that kind of, you know, almost like a dad in the dugout there. He wanted guys to follow that same mentality where it's not the end of the world. We don't have to freak out. We don't have to get in umpires' faces now. We just have to move on. And people hated that about Craig Counsell. I didn't have a problem with it. He was in games. When he had to go out there and argue, Craig Counsell got his money's worth, and he told the umpire everything that he thought he was effing up on that game. And I thought it was the funniest thing ever when he'd go out there and yell. But nothing but the best for Craig Counsell. I would love him to stay in Milwaukee because he does a lot with a little. But at the same time, like you said, if he wants to go out there and chase it and he thinks one of these other organizations can get him there, that's up to him and that's his case.
Now, the question is, if Craig Counsell decides to leave, who do we replace him with? I don't really know that many guys that will be willing to come to Milwaukee. I mean, I just don't know how many coaches there are in baseball generally. So, I mean, I'm not very knowledgeable about that stuff, but I mean, if Craig Counsell leaves, we're losing a very big aspect of our team, and I can imagine it's going to be tough to find someone that can fill that void for us.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have bench coach Pat Murphy would be an option. I've always said Jonathan Lucroy. Lucroy came back. He was if anybody doesn't know, old catcher for the Brewers. He's actually working in the front office for the Brewers now. That's how Craig Counsell started too. Jonathan Lucroy could be an option. I would love to see Ryan Braun come back and be the hitting coach for the Brewers. I just think that would be enticing because Braun when he was right, he had a very good approach at the plate. I don't care as many people that want to tell me that he did drugs and everything in between. I don't care. The dude was a solid hitter. He could when he was right, that guy put the ball in right field every single time. Right center field gap. He was that dude for the Brewers for the longest time. Before Christian Yelich became that guy for the Brewers in 2018, 2019, Ryan Braun was that guy. I miss Braun the past couple years. I thought they were a Ryan Braun away from being over the top, and that's where I think bringing him back, having guys who players can relate to, I think that would be a big thing too. Craig Counsell is a relatable guy, I think, to a lot of these players, and I think bringing guys back like Braun, Lucroy even, guys that these players can relate to, and also Lucroy he's been working with the catchers reportedly. He can continue to do that kind of stuff. He's going to bring those player-manager moments into his coaching style, and I think that would be a good thing for the Brewers. But that's enough about that. We got to wait and see what Craig Counsell does before we talk anymore. We got to get into Badger football because the Badgers have a game in Indiana. They're playing in Indiana at Bloomington Memorial Stadium, Saturday, 11 o'clock kick there. Indiana coming into this one, a little uncertainty. Their starting quarterback was injured in this one. Jackson, he won the starting job early on, injured as of late. He is out for this ball game. I'm going to throw it to you for the stats in this one. Just you're my stat guy, so I need the leaders in stats leading into this one for Indiana. And if you want to, throw it in there for Wisconsin.
Let me just look up a couple stats here for Indiana.
Put them on the spot.
You're putting me on the spot. My Wi-Fi is not working. Everything's not going good. My everything's loading right now.
You got her over there?
Free. I got a black screen. You put me on the spot. My Wi-Fi is kicking dust right now.
Yeah, he's got nothing for me right now. So we're gonna go through the stats here.
I'm sure you have the stats right in front of me. You right in front of you. You just want to put me on the spot right there. Oh, now the stats load. Now they load. Oh, wow, that's crazy. All right, let's see here. Well, so you take a look here. Taven Jackson looks to be like their number one QB. He has 914 passing yards, 78 completion. What'd you say?
He is injured leading into this ball game.
Oh, so they're probably going to go with their backup, Brendan Sorsby. Never heard of the guy. Sorsby? That sounds about right. 689 passing yards, 54% completion, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Not too shabby. I mean, I can't imagine. It seems like Indiana's kind of just not doing too hot overall as a team. Rushing, Jalen Lucas seems to be like their guy. I mean, he only has 242 yards on 56 carries. Christian Turner, their number 2 running back, has 52 carries for 227 yards. A lot of guys seems like they've been rotating for rushing. I mean, they have a lot of guys in the 100 yards. And then receiving, Donovan McCulley, 24 receptions for 320 yards, 2 touchdowns. So it seems like a lot of these guys, for their offense at least, their stats are really low. I mean, I don't know. It just kind of shows that Indiana's just not that strong of a team as they once were. I mean, I remember a while back they were like really, really pretty good, but it just seems like this year they have a down year on at least for looking at it from their stats. And then for defense, their linebacker, Aaron Casey, 47 solo tackles, 22 assists, 69 tackles, 3.5 sacks. Looks like he leads all of their defensive players in tackles and also sacks. So he's probably he's their best player, it seems like, on the defense which makes sense because linebackers usually they get funneled all the tackles for the most part. But overall, Indiana not a strong team. I mean, I hope the Badgers would be able to beat these guys, but I guess we'll just have to see.
I think it almost sets up like a trap game for Wisconsin because Indiana is they're 2-6 right now. Indiana's kind of on the low point, but it sets up as a trap game. They play Northwestern next, who isn't that great of an opponent, but you could look past an Indiana team. And that's where I think Wisconsin has to avoid making this a trap game, making it into something that it's not supposed to be, which is a ball game in this one. Like you were going over, I know the stats look low, but it really shows how much they spread it out. That like the run game there, like you were going through with Lucas, Turner, Howland, Henderson get involved, and Holman. They have all over 100, some over 200 yards rushing on the season. It's by committee there. I mean, they go 5 deep with the running backs. They're going to throw it all at you, see what works, which tailback's working, and they're going to keep riding with it, it almost looks like there. Indiana is going to play you tough. They're going to, like it looks like, I mean, you look at receiving too. They spread it out through 5 receivers there in that formation. So, I mean, they're throwing it all at you. They're throwing everybody at you. They're keeping it fresh. They're not really burning one guy out. And that's where I really look at this Indiana team is that it's by committee there. They're going to try and burn you out before they burn out in this one. So looking at it from the perspective of Wisconsin in this one, Wisconsin needs to put some pressure on Sorsby. Sorsby coming into this one, he technically is the backup quarterback for Indiana. Has a decent amount of work on the season here. He's got 107 attempts throwing the football here. 7 sacks, though. So I think it's going to be huge for Wisconsin's defense to be able to get into the backfield, put some pressure on Sorsby. He's only got 1 interception on the year, but 7 sacks. He knows when to fall is basically what I'm seeing out of that. He knows when to get down and get the heck out of the way. Wisconsin needs to continue putting pressure on him in this one because I think that's going to be huge leading into this ball game with Indiana. But I look at it from the perspective of how much does last week's game weigh on this defense? Because the defense against Ohio State played well, but you listen to some of those guys after the game there, and they were down in the dumps. They were lost. They thought, we should have won that game. We had opportunities. The defense had 3 turnovers, played an impressive game against Ohio State, and the offense just couldn't get it done. What do you think that a game like that coming out, you're on that defense. You just watched your offense struggle the week before to put up points for you after you played a very impressive game against Ohio State. The score didn't show it. 24 points from Ohio State, 400 some yards, but the defense did play well. I mean, 400 yards it's nothing to hang your hat on, but I thought the defense played well. I mean, they had moments of greatness, and then they had moments where they let Ohio State break off a 90-yard run. It wasn't actually 90, but, that's what I mean, is that they just had moments where they had some luxes. So, from your opinion, leading up into this ball game here, do you think a loss like that, especially on the defense, do you think that weighs on you leading into this next game against Indiana?
I think it's tough for our defense for how much effort they put towards Ohio State and how many big plays they did have, and then our offense went out there and it seemed like they turned the ball over 3 and out. It is tough on a defense for them to sustain what they have, but I mean, looking forward to Indiana, you kind of just have to put Ohio State in your back pocket and just move on to the next game. Because, I mean, every game in the Big Ten is not guaranteed no matter who it is. I mean, yeah, Northwestern, Indiana, no matter who. I mean, they may be bad, but, I mean, it's still the Big Ten. There's still some pretty good teams. So even though Ohio State, yeah, they may be down in the dumps after that one, but, I mean, you got to take away the good things that you did, and you got to take away the good things that you did, bring them into the next game against Indiana, and then learn from the bad things that you did against Ohio State and improve on them against Indiana, who's not as good of a team as Ohio State, and you just got to improve on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Putting it in your back pocket and just letting it go. Just letting it go. It almost sucks to say, but as a player, you saw Ohio State coming to town. You had the faith that you could pull it off. But in the same, it's hard sometimes when you play that much of a powerhouse of a team, the way your season's heading, to just say to yourself, this is going to happen. We're going to pull this off. So then when it was close, I think that's what made it so much worse, was that they didn't expect to be in the game. And then when it was the third quarter and they tied it up 10-10, it's like, whoa, okay, we can actually do this. And then just to see it slowly go downhill after that and your offense can't do it. That's where I was kind of leaning with that comment, was because that moment was huge and it just kind of fell apart on them. Like,
It's almost like one of those things that you say, would you rather have a close game against a really good team or just get blown out by that team? And here, I mean, they're probably thinking that they rather would have just gotten blown out than having a close game. It seems like now, like when you have a close game against a really good team and you lose, it's like, damn, we were like that close to being that really good team. When if you're playing a really good team and you get blown out, you're kind of like, well, I mean, they're a really good team. I mean, what are you supposed to expect? So I can see how the defense kind of like, not just the defense, but Wisconsin overall, how they can feel that effect on, dang, we could have beat this really good. We could have beat number 3 Ohio State. Like, what are we doing here? But I mean, yeah, you kind of just got to move on at this point. You still got a few more games to win if you want to make a bowl game. So.
And yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree with you there. And like you said before, it's a flush it. We got to move on and get to Indiana now. Take care of business ahead. Wisconsin controls their own destiny down this stretch here. Praying for an Iowa loss here coming up in the next couple of weeks, but they control their own destiny, and bowl games are on the line now. Indiana, if they lose this game to Wisconsin, will not be bowl eligible. So Indiana's coming out hot in this ball game because there's nothing, they know their season's lost. They're not doing anything spectacular, but they still have the possibility of a bowl game, and they want that more than anything. So that's where Wisconsin needs to avoid making this into a trap game. Now, in this one, just what I want to see is a little bit more consistency out of Locke. I think Braden Locke has slowly been building himself up. He hasn't been 100% that guy yet. I think he's showing glimpses, and that's the promise that I was hoping for. I just haven't seen him get over that, 50, 60, 70% completion in a game. Right now he's hovering around that 50%. I want to see him get up to 70 on a game. I want to see him get a little bit close to 80. Something, to see him just getting more productive week by week. They're talking Tanner Mordecai might come back at some point this season. I want Braden Locke to have that spot locked down because that's funny because it's Braden Locke locked down. I think Braden Locke is hands down the better quarterback between him and Mordecai, and I hope Braden Locke locks down that position. I can't say it without smiling. I hope that he locks down that position because I love what Braden Locke's doing with this Wisconsin team right now. I love his poise, the potential that he has. I just want to see him keep building off it. I thought after the first quarter against Ohio State, we saw Braden Locke kind of settle in. We didn't really see it in that first quarter. He was airmailing some passes. Receivers, well, we can't help that these guys can't catch half the time. But Locke was struggling a little bit early on with his confidence, I thought. And then as the game progressed, I thought he found himself, and we were watching something great on the football field. So I just want to see a little bit more consistency out of Braden Locke. Like we talked about, Indiana, not a very productive team. Their complementary football is key to Indiana. They're pretty evenly based. And Wisconsin's going to have to control the trenches in this ball game against Indiana there. Hold the line of scrimmage, put pressure on, stop that run game, force Sorsby to throw it. And I think that's going to be big for Wisconsin in this one.
Yeah. Being offensive lineman, the game always starts within the trenches. I mean, you're going to want your offense wanting to move that line of scrimmage, push them back, try and protect the pocket, especially for Locke being a younger guy. I mean, like you said, seemed like he was a little timid. We talked about this. He seemed like he was a little timid against Ohio State in that first half, and then he started to get used to the game. Did start to do better against Ohio State in the second half. But now, if our O line can give him that protection, and do all the right things, we can see that production out of Locke right away, starting in the first half against Indiana. And yeah, I think doing what you need to do in the trenches, starting off the game right on both sides of the offense and defense, that would be key. That would be one of the huge keys for Badgers in this one.
And if we have not gotten reports on Braylon Allen or Chimere Dike yet, so if Braylon Allen is not able to go against Indiana here, it's going to rely a lot on Jackson Aker and Cade Yakameli and what those two can do in this ball game. Yakameli right now, he's still only got one carry for -4 yards, so we haven't seen much out of Yakameli. He played that one snap against Ohio State. Other than that, Jackson Aker, we're going to have to see a little bit out of him in this one. Otherwise, Wisconsin's going to have to rely a lot on that pass game, and the pass game isn't there at times for Wisconsin. Too many drop passes. And the best drives start with the run game. Getting the run game going, then you work into the pass game. And that's where I think Jackson Aker, Cade Yakameli, they need to step up big for the Badgers in this one. Also, field position is going to be huge for Wisconsin in this one. You look at that game against Ohio State, punting was a problem for Wisconsin. And when I say that, Ohio State had a lot of times they were starting at the 45, the 50-yard line against this Badger team. That's where I think Wisconsin needs to improve in this one, is on the special team side of it. If you got to punt it away, we need to be able to pin Indiana deep so that way they aren't starting with some pretty good field position already to jump on this defense for Wisconsin.
Yeah. Like we talk about at lacrosse, we like to say turn touchdowns into field goals, field goals into punts, and then punts into good field position. Field position is huge. And especially with an Indiana team that is not very good at special teams, hopefully we can exploit that a little bit and use that to our advantage to put Locke in a good position, our defense in good position to hold them to stops and to get the ball back to the offense.
Yeah, and make them have to drive that full length of the field. We don't want to have them start at the 45 and only have to work with short field. We want to pin them back and work with it from there. But with that, going off of that, so we're going to jump out of that a little bit. Going off of the Braylon Allen injury, there was a report that came out. They talked to right guard Michael Furtney, and in that conversation, they talked to him about the Braylon Allen injury, because when they went through it, there was a failed shovel pass on 3rd and goal against Ohio State. So based on what UW saw from the video, Furtney anticipated middle linebacker Tommy Eckenberg would blitz. He was ready to execute the block, and that was supposed to help Allen spring into the end zone there. Left guard Joe Huber was set to pull around Furtney and handle any defender closing in from the left side of Ohio State's formation. A few seconds after the snap, Furtney fell off his block. Huber was down on the turf, unable to block any defender. Eckenberg stoned Allen, who suffered a left ankle injury that kept him out the entire second half against Ohio State there. So, and that's going to lead into this Indiana game, properly executing plays. It's the simple things. It's a game of inches. And a simple thing like that, where, as an offensive lineman, he saw Eckenberg was coming, and he knew, I have to make this block. He couldn't make the block. And, just to be able to get in his way, because Eckenberg met Braylon Allen right on the line. There was no block. Nobody made it to Eckenberg. He flew through there wide in front. And that's how injuries happen, is, full-on collision between these two. So, just a little story there. I was wondering what kind of happened on that play, because Eckenberg did come through. You saw it in live time. You saw him come through just like a bat out of hell. Just coming straight through the hole. And now we see a little bit of what happened truly. There was some not so good stuff happening with the offensive line. Let's just go with that. The offensive line failed on that play. Not saying that the offensive line failed the entire game, but that was a big moment. game eventuates and something like that happens. Braylon Allen, no update so far. Hopefully, we will get an update here before the game. I don't know. It's kind of leading towards we're not going to know until the opening snap of this game against Indiana because we haven't got
I'm
a
assuming
report
it's going to be on
Braylon
Saturday,
Allen so
right?
far. Unless if you could go over.
I
That's
assume
what
it's
I'm
going to be on
thinking, but I'm
Saturday
going to
right
put my
before the
stat
game.
guy
But
on it right now.
what
I'm going to
about
put my stat guy on it right now. He's going to see if he can find me anything. And then if he can't find anything, nobody can because he is the guy behind the keyboard right now. So, Austin, you see if you can't find me anything on the Braille.
I'm going to Google right now.
So with that, though, until Austin gets back to us here, we're going to jump over into the Packers because the Packers will have a big game against the Rams there, coming off of an interesting week. And some more interesting news came out in the Rasul Douglas trade to the Bills. Did you see any of those reports when they came out?
What reports about the trades?
About when the trades happened. Did you see the reports that came out of what happened truly behind the scenes?
I haven't seen anything. Also, I don't really invest in as much in the Packers.
So apparently, Rasul Douglas came out and he said that he found out that he was being traded somewhere in the 3 p.m. hour on Tuesday. He said that Packers' Brian Gutekunst called him and said that they were trading him, and actually Rasul Douglas hung up the phone because he didn't believe Gutekunst was telling him the truth. So then right after that, Packers president Mark Murphy called him, thanked him for everything, and he realized it was real. So Rasul Douglas found out over a phone call that he was being traded, and after that he was at the facility, and Aaron Jones was there with him. Apparently, got really emotional. Tears were being thrown. They cried together, and so when I heard that, when I saw that, I was baffled. I thought that this trade was truthfully interesting at first. What the heck was going on? And then to hear everything that came out of it, that there was guys this upset, this distraught after hearing this news, I was kind of baffled by it. And I'm trying to find, I had what Keyshawn Nixon had to say. Keyshawn Nixon came out after it and he said, I was really lost for words. I understand it's a business, but I'm still sick to my stomach. He said how they're going to miss Douglas. And he said it was somebody who stabilized the locker room. Now he's gone. If you didn't have the locker room before, Matt LaFleur, Brian Gutekunst, Mark Murphy, if you did not have this locker room before, you just lost it. You truthfully just lost the team. I mean, just to see what Keyshawn Nixon said, and then Aaron Jones, Douglas was on his press conference when he got to the Bills, and he came out and he talked. He said Jones was there. We had an emotional moment. We cried. Just to see the impact that this guy had, you tore the locker room apart with this move. I understand you're in a rebuild. I understand the business, just like Keyshawn Nixon said. But at the same time, you took one of your biggest leaders out of the locker room. And that's where I'm just not a fan. I'm just not a fan of it.
Yeah, right now it's not looking good for the whole Packer culture. I'm not going to lie. Especially with what you're saying about a lot of players being upset. Team morale is one of the biggest things. Having chemistry is one of the biggest things when it comes to how a team produces on the field, how they play for each other. But when upper management does something like that because it's a business, I just hate hearing how it's a business. I get it. Football is all about making money and stuff, but you're not putting your team in a good position to win when you're damaging the team chemistry and morale. And overall, it's just not a good position that the Packers want to be in right now with that. By the sounds of it, like you were saying, Aaron Jones was crying and Keyshawn Nixon was not too happy about it. And also how the way that they conducted about telling Rasul Douglas on how he was trained too. I mean, for a guy that's done, I mean, he's only been here for a few years, but for how much he's put in for the Packers organization and then giving him a phone call that he's being traded, I mean, I feel like that's kind of a little bit bogus on the Packers' part. I mean, it's sad to see, but yeah, not a whole team morality, and the whole team morality and culture is kind of just going to the crapper for the Packers right now between upper management and the players.
If Gutekunst thought he was not, if he thought he was losing the fan base before, he's definitely losing the fan base now. The fans are, I mean, just like the Packers, irritated. You look at, I saw an interesting thing too. I just wanted to get into before we get into this preview. And Packers got a third rounder, right, back for Rasul Douglas. I'm going to go all the way back to 2018 for you and tell you the third round picks the Packers have gotten, okay? 2018, they got a guy by the name of Oren Burks, currently with the 49ers. Then in 2019, they got Jay Sternberger, currently out of the NFL. Joshua DeGora, Amari Rogers, out of the NFL. Sean Ryan, 0 career offensive snaps, and Tucker Kraft. Looks like a lot of success there in the third round for Brian Gutekunst. So I can't wait to see what this third rounder is going to get turned into for the Green Bay Packers. But with that, we're going to jump over into the matchup here. Packers have the Rams coming up on Sunday. It's a noon kickoff. Rams coming in this one 3-5 on the season. The Packers coming in at 2-5. Looks like the Rams will be without Matthew Stafford for this ball game here. I'm not sure, not 100% sure. He is currently listed as questionable. He has a hand injury right now. I did see that he did not participate in practice on Wednesday or Thursday. So we will see what comes out of it today, and then that will lead up into the weekend there. But with that, I'm going to jump over to Austin for the stats here for the Rams. Some of the key stats we're looking at.
Yeah, so for Matthew Stafford being out, that's kind of huge because he has 2,000 passing yards on the year so far, 8 games played, 278 attempts, and 166 completions. So he's sitting at about 59% completion. So with him being out, that's kind of huge. They're going to switch their focus to Brett Rypien. I don't really know how to say his last name. It's Rypien. Brett Rypien. That sounds about right. Honestly, I don't quite know. But he's only been in one game with 10 attempts and 5 completions, so 50%, and 42 yards. That's a huge difference, 42 yards to 2,007 yards. So Matthew Stafford being out, that's not looking too good for the Rams there. But looking at the rushing stats, you see Kyren Williams. He's kind of been their go-to guy. You look 456 rushing yards, 97 carries, and 6 touchdowns. After that, Royce Freeman with 110 yards. So about a 300-yard difference there in running back. So it seems like Kyren Williams is kind of their go-to back for them. And then receiving, you look at their receiving, you see a rookie, Puka Nacua. I think it's pronounced Nacua. I feel bad. I don't really know how to say his last name. But the rookie out of yeah, true. The rookie out of BYU for the Rams, he's kind of put up a eye-opening season here for being a rookie. I mean, you look at it, he has 795 yards receiving, 89 targets, 61 receptions, and 2 touchdowns. And this, I mean, obviously goes with Cooper Kupp being out for the majority of the starting season so far. I mean, Cooper Kupp's only been in 4 games, but now he's coming back, and you can already see he's already putting up some stats. Cooper Kupp has 316 yards receiving and 38 targets, 21 receptions, and 1 touchdown. So I'm sure they're going to be putting him more in the offense as the season goes by. And Tutu Atwell as well, getting 361 yards, 3 touchdowns, 28 receptions there. for the offense. And then you look at the defense, looks like Ernest Jones is leading them with 75 total tackles. And a safety is their second leading tackler, Jordan Fuller, which kind of surprised me. I mean, usually you don't want your safeties being your leading tacklers. That kind of tells you that either A, they're getting a lot of balls caught on them, or B, a lot of run plays are getting to the second level. Or, I mean, their safeties could just be good at filling in general. So, overall, the Rams, they seem like they kind of have their go-to guys for rushing, and they do pass it a little bit for their receiving. But, I mean, with Matthew Stafford, that could be a real kicker for them, trying to rely on Brett Rypien.
Yeah, and in this one, it's going to be key to put pressure on Rypien. If Matthew Stafford can't go, putting some pressure on the young guy, Rypien, trying to get in his head early on here. Give your secondary some chances with some wobbly passes or anything out there to be able to get some picks out there. Packers don't really have a lot of fumbles on. I can't remember the last time they actually forced a fumble on the season. I don't even know if they have one. And then
I think they forced one against Minnesota, I'm pretty sure. They had a sack fumble.
Otherwise, I don't really remember.
But besides that, not too many.
Yeah, I mean, they don't force a lot of takeaways. So I think that could be a big key in this one is putting pressure on Rypien. And also looking at the offense, we've gone through week by week here, and we talk about what the Packers need to do to win the game. I don't even care about winning anymore. Can the offense find a rhythm early on in this ball game? Because this offense cannot get going until the third, fourth quarter consistently. Right now, I want to see opening drive, second drive. I want to see something. I want to see it. You don't have to score a touchdown. That's not what Packer fans want to see. We don't want to see you put up 100 points in a game because you scored a touchdown every single drive. That's not what anybody's asking for. We're asking for that you can put together at least a drive where you don't go 3 and out for the first 7 drives of the game. We want to see a first down, a couple first downs. Get it to midfield. Now we got to punt. Crap. Okay, that's fine because the offense is showing something. We need the offense to show something early on in this ball game here, especially with Jordan Love. I just want to see some consistency out of Jordan Love, something that they can build off. And that is going to come a lot on, do the Packers offensive play calling in this one. Packers need offensive play calling coaching. Packers need to really get into the faces of these receivers and say, hey, we need to stop with this wrong route crap. We need to stop with the routes that are fading into each other. We need to run this offense crisp. The offense hasn't been crisp at all. There hasn't been one time where I could say that play was ran right, unless if it's a run straight up the middle where the wide receivers don't have to do anything. Constantly something is wrong on a play. We can't blame Jordan Love for everything. We can't because the receivers aren't running the right routes. If the receivers run the right routes, we're not making the throws, now we can blame them. So in this one, I just want to see some consistency out of the offense and out of the coaching of Matt LaFleur there to put a scheme together in this one. And with implying that with the defense too, putting schemes, but also being able to adjust at halftime throughout the game, wherever it is, being able to adjust to what the Rams are doing and build off it, make something work in this.
Yeah, and to go along with that, I didn't even mention Aaron Donald is still on the Rams. So that's huge for them, huge for the Rams, and it's going to be huge for the Packers to keep him in check. I mean, he is still one of the greatest D tackles I've ever seen play so far. So to keep him in check is going to be huge for the Packers. And to go along with all the coaching and all the things that the Packers need to do in the first half, I feel like one of the biggest things is going to be how the Packers stay disciplined throughout the game. You know, not having those penalties, not having those holdings right away, not having them false starts, all the procedural stuff. I mean, it goes along with a little bit of the coaching like you talked about. Having a little bit of discipline, having a little bit of accountability. It'll be interesting to see how the Packers get through that. I mean, the Packers are the number one team in the NFL in penalties. I mean, you don't. I mean, I can't remember the last time I've ever seen the Packers have that have that as one of their statistics. I mean, I've usually known as the Packers being very disciplined, having not that many penalties, but it seems like this, especially after last game. I mean, last game was just brutal, and we talked about that, so we don't gotta get into that too much. But the Packers just, I think it's going to be huge that they stay disciplined, and that will allow them to move the ball in the first half. I mean, because last week they had five. I can't remember how many penalties it was in the first half, and then we wonder, oh, wait, was it? Yeah, 8, and then we wonder, it's like, oh, well, why aren't they moving the ball? Well, probably because they have 8 penalties, a lot of them being, unsportsmanlike conducts. So I mean, just being disciplined, that will allow them to have those drives in the first half and allow them to score. I mean, even at least a field goal. I mean, put some points on the board for us the first half. That would be huge, especially against a pretty. I mean, Rams might not have the toughest defense, but I mean, with Aaron Donald there and some pretty decent players, I mean, it's still a good, tough defense.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, avoiding mistakes. That's going to be huge. Avoiding mistakes if you are the Packers. The mistakes that you can control. Avoid them, and this game will go a little bit cleaner for you. And I think that'll be a step in the right direction. Like I said, I don't even care. As we've seen from Brian Gutekunst, the season's lost. I mean, he threw the white towel. The white flag is waving. He's given up on it. He wants us to give up on it too. We just want to see something that they can build off in the future. And if that's the simple things like avoiding mistakes, starting to move the ball a little bit better, slowly, by the end of the season, we're seeing something. That's what we want to see here. Also, use Aaron Jones. We paid the guy. He stayed in Green Bay. He's not, I mean, he's showing he's in practice. He's good enough for 10 snaps, 15 snaps. Put him out there for 20. Use the guy. At least give us a little bit of Aaron Jones. Looking at the injury report there, coming into today, Jair Alexander was limited at practice Wednesday. Everybody was limited at practice. Jair Alexander, Elton Jenkins, Aaron Jones, Luke Musgrave, Nijman, and Rudy Ford. All those guys limited at practice Wednesday and Thursday. We'll have to see what Friday brings for them. But as of right now, everybody is currently practicing, which is a good sign. Everybody is currently practicing and going to be hopefully out on the field here for this game against the Rams. Rams coming up this weekend. Hopefully we will see good things from the Packers. Start to rebuild, I guess, is going to be our emphasis now. We are rebuilding, and we want to see something productive out there on the field. With that, though, we got to jump over into the college football weekend. We have a big slate coming up here this Saturday. We have Ohio State and Rutgers at 11. Who do we got in that one?
I think this one's a no-brainer. Ohio State.
Well, Rutgers is 6-2 on the season, so I had to ask. It is at Rutgers.
I'm still saying Ohio State.
The line's at 18.5. I think Rutgers is going to keep her closer, but I think Ohio State. I agree with that one. Also at 11, we have Texas and Kansas State.
This one could be Kansas State's game to get back in that Big 12 race. I'm gonna still say Texas, but I say that's a game that you should definitely watch out for sure, especially with a lot of upsets happening lately.
I agree with that one. It is in Austin, so I like Texas in that one also. Looking at 11, we have Ole Miss and Texas A&M. I'm going to take Ole Miss in that one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ole Miss. I haven't seen Texas A&M kind of go back to their old Texas A&M ways, and Ole Miss has kind of been doing pretty good for themselves over there, so I'm going to stick with Ole Miss.
Next up at 11, we have Notre Dame and Clemson. I am going to take Clemson in this ballgame.
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm looking at that, I'm like, Clemson, Notre Dame. Notre Dame's had some pretty tough games over this past year. Clemson, they're struggling, but, I mean, it is still a Clemson team. I'm going to go with Notre Dame and Sam Hartman, just because the guy looks good.
There we go. Next up, we have 1-7 UConn traveling to Knoxville to take on Tennessee. I'm going to take Tennessee in that.
I would hope you take Tennessee on that one. UConn isn't much of a football school. They're 1-7, not looking good for them over there. So I'm gonna go with Tennessee.
Tennessee in that one. Next up, we have Utah and Arizona State. I'm going to take Utah to bounce back in that one and take care of Arizona State.
Yeah, Utah, tough loss to Oregon last week. I think they're going to bounce back, especially against Arizona State team that's 1-4 in the Pac-12, 2-6 overall. So I'm gonna go with Utah to bounce back with you.
Next up, we have at 1:30, Army is taking on number 25 Air Force. I'm going to take Air Force in that ball game.
Yeah, Air Force. I mean, they've looked pretty dominant in their weird offense, I should say, that they kind of run. They run predominantly run game. Army also runs a predominantly high run game, so don't expect a lot of passes out of that game. It might be a faster paced game, I should say, but I'm going to go with Air Force in that one. They've been pretty good out of the group of 5 conferences right there.
And our first big game of the day is at 2. I mean, there were some big games before that, but one of our best games that we're going to have on Saturday, I think, coming up at 2:30, number 12 Missouri is going to be taking on number 2 Georgia. I think Georgia is going to get tested in this one. I think Georgia will pull off the win, but I think Missouri is going to hang around in this one and punch them in the mouth a few times. I have Georgia, but in a close one.
Yeah. Only a year ago, Georgia played Missouri, and I mean, Missouri tested them pretty good last year and that was for a Missouri team that wasn't ranked. And I don't think they were ranked at all last year. Maybe they were top 20s, maybe, but this year definitely a better Missouri team. I'm gonna go with Georgia as well. Could be a 1-score game though. I can see that one also being Missouri testing Georgia, and maybe that will test the theory if they should be a 2-team or not. Number 2 team or not.
Definitely. And next up at 2:30, we have Florida State Pitt. I have Florida State winning that ball game.
Yeah, I'd be pretty comfortable taking Florida State on this one. Pittsburgh doesn't look too strong in the ACC or overall, so I'm going to go with Florida State with you on that one.
Definitely right there. And at 2:30, we have Oklahoma State in a matchup. I am going to take Oklahoma State pulling off the upset against Oklahoma.
You see, I was actually going to go Oklahoma State on this one because I see it is in Stillwater, Oklahoma. It is at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma just came off of a loss against Kansas, so they could be playing iffy. But since you win Oklahoma State, I'm going to go Oklahoma and take the top team there.
Had to go again. Next up at 2:30, we have Penn State and Maryland. I think Tagovailoa kind of keeps Maryland in this ball game against Penn State. I do think Penn State's going to win it. I think it's going to be by either 3 or 7. I don't think they're going to blow them out of the water.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Penn State on this one. The line is Penn State with 8, but I think it might be even under that. I mean, I think it might be a pretty close game. Penn State it's either going to be a close game or a blowout for sure. It'll be interesting to see how Maryland plays against them, though.
Definitely will be. And next up at 2:30, we have Louisville, Virginia Tech. I'm taking number 13, Louisville, in that one.
Yeah, Louisville's been playing some pretty good football. I mean, they dominated against Duke, who I thought would beat Louisville last week. Got that one wrong, sadly. And so I'm going to take Louisville against a Virginia Tech team.
Next up at 2:30, we have Tulane taking on East Carolina. I like Tulane winning that ball game.
Yeah, I got to stick with my group of 5 teams out here. You know, we're kind of lonely. We're dwindling away. So I'm going to go with Tulane here and to stay in the top 25 for us.
Next up, we have Oregon taking on Cal in a 4:30 game. That's interesting. You don't really see 4:30 games. 4:30, the start time for that one. I'm going to take Oregon in that ball game.
I'm going to take Oregon, but don't look too shallow on that California team. They did test USC last week, so I mean, you never know what could come out. But it is in Autzen Stadium, Eugene, Oregon. I mean, I think Oregon plays pretty tough when they're at home. I'm gonna have to go with number 6 Oregon right there.
Definitely, the Pac-12 has got a lot of bottom feeders that are playing heck of games against these top ranked teams in Pac-12 right now. Kansas, Iowa State is our next ball game. I have Kansas. That game, I bet you it was supposed to be in Kansas, but they still haven't replaced the field goal post yet, so they had to move it to Iowa State. I just got that feeling. But I got Kansas in that ball game.
Yeah, I like Kansas here. They're kind of like one of my underdog favorites. If I didn't have to cheer for the Badgers, I'd cheer for Kansas. So I got to go with Kansas here against Iowa State.
Definitely. And next up at 6:30 on NBC, Michigan will be taking on Purdue. Quite the primetime matchup. I'm going to take Michigan in that.
Yeah, I can't see this being much of a prime. I mean, it's prime time, but I mean, if Michigan got the right signs, then it looks like they're going to be blowing the Purdue Boilermakers out pretty badly on this night.
The big game of the night will be at 6:30. Washington will be taking on USC. I think Washington wins. They have the line at 3 right now. I think Washington wins by a couple scores. I just don't like USC defense. I think their defense gives up a lot of points. You look at, like you said, last week against Cal, gave up, 49 in that one? I'm pretty sure they won 50-49 or something like that. I mean, this defense isn't good for USC. We saw that when they played Notre Dame. I think Washington wins this thing by a couple scores.
Yeah, for the line only being 3, that kind of surprises me. USC has been playing the best football. I mean, even though they did get the win against Cal, it is a Cal team that isn't predominantly very good. So, and Washington's been playing some pretty darn good football with Michael Penix over there. So, I'm going to go with Washington on this one as well. And who knows, they might sneak into the top 4 next week with this win also.
Definitely. That would be a huge win for Washington, a resume booster, and it would knock USC out of the top 25. Next up at 6:45 on CBS, LSU will be taking on Alabama. I'm going to take Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide in this one. I like what LSU's been doing this season. I just think Nick Saban he is an automatic couple points for you and a heck of a defense. That's what, I mean, he brings a little bit something extra. I think Nick Saban does just enough to win this game against LSU.
Yeah, Alabama is pretty good. LSU ranked 14, 6-2 overall. Alabama 7-1. It is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Bryant-Denny Stadium. I mean, I can imagine that the atmosphere there's going to be firing. I'm going to go LSU on this one. A little upset magic on Saturday night on CBS. You know how those CBS SEC games be sometimes, especially now in November. I think LSU could get the win out here, especially with the line only being 3. Alabama's tough, but I mean, now is LSU's time to start making a push for that SEC championship.
I like that. I like that move there. Next up, 9 o'clock. If you still want to watch college football and you're for some reason up at 9 o'clock, we have Oregon State taking on Colorado. I love the upset in this one. I really do think Colorado will pull it off against Oregon State here at 9 o'clock there in Boulder, and I think that gives Colorado a boost.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was looking on this list. I'm like, Colorado, they've struggled against their top 25 teams here. But I think Oregon State, after losing a close game against Arizona, they're on their shambles a little bit. I think Colorado can get this win against a very fairly decent Oregon State team ranked at 16th there.
Definitely agree with you there on that one. Next up at 9:30, we have UCLA taking on Arizona. I got Arizona in that ball game.
You got Arizona, and I'm going UCLA. Arizona did play good against Oregon State, but I think UCLA might slightly be a little bit better. I'm going UCLA because why not? Because I can. That's why. Who's going to tell me no?
That's fair. That's fair. You're entitled to your own opinion right here on Wisconsin Sports on the Go. Next, we're going to jump over into the NFL real quick and just go through our picks fast there in the NFL. Report on Thursday night. Yesterday night, we did see the Steelers beat the Titans there 20-16. Looking at Sunday, 8:30 game, we have the Dolphins and the Chiefs. I like the Chiefs in a bounce-back game there in Frankfurt.
I'm going Dolphins.
Dolphins. Next up at noon, we have the Vikings and the Falcons. I am going to take the Vikings. I think it's a rally the troops game. Kirk Cousins is out. They now have Dobbs is coming up to take his spot basically in Minnesota. I think it's a rally the troops game, and I think the Vikings pull it off.
Dobbs is a pretty decent replacement for Captain Kirk, but I'm going to go Falcons here. You know, Taylor Heineke power. He had his moments in Washington, bringing that now down to the Falcons. I'm going to go with the Falcons on this one, huh?
Falcons with the win there. Next up, we have the Cardinals and Browns. I got the Browns in that one.
Yeah, Browns. Browns have been playing some pretty good football, especially on the defensive side. I got to go with the Browns on this one.
Next up, we have, well, we already talked about it, Rams-Packers, so we'll move on from that one. Next up, we have the Commanders and the Patriots. I'm going to take the Patriots to win that one.
I'm going to take the Commanders. Commanders put up a good fight against the Eagles, and they've been playing, I mean, even though some games they haven't completely won, they've been playing up some pretty good fights. I think they'll crack this one against the New England Patriots.
There we go. Next up, we have the Bears and the Saints. I'm going to take the Saints in that one.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with taking the Saints in this one, too. Just the Bears, you know.
Definitely the Bears. Next up, we have the Ravens and Seahawks. I'm going to take the Ravens in that one. I've been impressed with the Ravens this year.
Ravens definitely on the top teams on my list. I'm going to go with the Ravens over the Seahawks on this one as well.
Next up, we have the Houston Texans and the Buccaneers. I am going to take the Texans. It's at home. I think the Texans have something special. They are brewing up there. It's not going to be this year, but I think over the coming years here, I think they're moving into I think they're starting to rebuild, and they're rebuilding fast. And I'm going to take the Texans to beat the
Buccaneers. Texans, after losing to the Panthers, they've kind of lost a little bit of my hope over there. I mean, you might still like them, but I'm going to go Buccaneers on this one.
What can I say? Remember, I was teetering on both boats. I'm waiting for the Packers one to sink so I can jump over to Houston.
Yep.
Next up, 305, we have the Colts and the Panthers. I'm going to take the Colts to win that one. I like what Gardner Minshew's been doing with the Colts so far this year. He's filled a role that he wasn't really supposed to be in.
I'm agree with you on this one. I like the Colts against the Panthers. Even though the Panthers did get that win against the Texans, Gardner Minshew has been playing some pretty good football for the Colts, so I'm going to go with the Colts on this one.
And next up at 325, we have the Giants and Raiders. As much as a dumpster fire as the Raiders are right now, with Josh McDaniels getting fired and O'Donnell, whatever the heck his name is, O'Connell? Is that the quarterback now?
Or honestly, I couldn't even tell you. All I know is it's not Jimmy G. So it's a rookie.
That's okay. We don't care about it right now. But I still think I'm going to take the Raiders in this one. The Giants are just all over the place this season. I just haven't been able to get behind the Giants. I'm going to take the Raiders.
I'm gonna go with the Raiders also. I saw something that the players for the Raiders are really starting to rally around their new interim coach. So I think the Raiders can get this win against New York and hopefully turn their season around.
Next up, it's going to be a big matchup there. Cowboys and Eagles. It's going to be in Philly. I think that's going to give the Eagles an edge. I like the Eagles in this ball.
I like Eagles. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a really good game. This might be one of the best games that we might see all season up until playoffs. But I think I'm going to go Eagles along with you. I mean, they got some pretty good star power. Their old line's really, really good. They got Jalen Hurts. But I wouldn't count out Cowboys making some plays. I mean, they put up a lot of points last game. They got CeeDee Lamb and Dak still making plays for them. So I'll go Eagles, but I wouldn't be surprised if Cowboys come out with the win also.
Definitely. It's going to be a big matchup there. And another big matchup, this night game, Sunday night, Bills-Bengals. I like the Bengals in that one. I think the Bengals offense is finally finding it. Joe Burrow looking healthy again. Jamar Chase rolling for him. I like the Bengals in that ball game.
I'm going to go with the Bills just for the fact that I hope that James Cook scores more touchdowns because I have him on my fantasy team. That's the only reason.
Fair
Put the ball in the end zone.
Next up, Monday night, we have the Chargers and the Jets. I think the Chargers will pull off that Monday night game.
Yeah. Chargers, they beat the Bears pretty handily. Now, the Bears ain't no Jets, but kind of similar. Jets aren't very good. They still don't have Aaron Rodgers. Who knows when he's going to come back, if he even comes back this season. So I think the Chargers are going to be able to take care of business in this one.
Definitely. It's going to be a full weekend of Wisconsin sports. If you're not watching Wisconsin, if you're not a fan of Wisconsin, check out the college football slate because it's going to be a big weekend for college football. Also, the NFL. It's going to be a huge weekend here in the state of Wisconsin. All kinds of games going on. Check out the Badgers. Bucks tonight. Check out the Badgers there against Indiana. Also, the Packers on Sunday. Hopefully see something a little bit better. But with that, that's all we have for you guys today. It's been awesome talking to you guys. Thank you guys for listening. This has been Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trades. We'll catch you guys back here on Monday. But until then, deuces.